Yeah, I would like to present some findings from a research project which was funded by the German Cancer Aid on psychological determinants of cancer screening non-attendance among men. So it is fitting well now after the talk of Johannes Blum. I'm a psychologist, and my research, my focus of my research is on gender studies and on health psychology. I would like to say something about the background of German standard cancer screening examination. The standard cancer screening examination includes prostate cancer screening, and that is the digital rectal examination. And then we have the colorectal cancer screening, the FOBT, or since 2002, the screening colonoscopy. There are no costs for participation, but it is an opportunistic screening without invitation system. And so we find that cancer screening measures are underutilized, especially by men, as in many other countries. So we were searching for determinants of cancer screening non-attendance among men. And we conducted several studies, and I can give only some findings of these studies. First of all, I want to say something about the first survey we did into 29,000 households, and we wanted to know something about the prevalence and correlates of prostate and colorectal cancer screening in men and women. We have annually the estimations how many people go to a cancer screening test within 1 year, but we did not have any data how many people have never participated or how many people participate on a regular basis. So that is the prevalence of FOBT use and as a function of gender. And you see an enormous gender difference. Nearly 30% of men have never had an FOBT, and women made use of FOBT much more often on a regular basis, every 1 or 2 years. In colonoscopy uptake, we did not find such a big gender difference, but here you have to see that it is not only screening colonoscopy, but diagnostic colonoscopies as well. We were also looking for correlates of this colorectal cancer test use, and we found that socioeconomic variables like education or income were either not significantly associated with test use or explained only a very minimal amount of variance. The so-called cues to action variables were more clearly associated with CRC use, test use, as the family history of cancer, the physician's recommendation, and especially attendance of regular medical checkups. The higher the values in these variables, the higher the probability that FOBT or colonoscopy had been undergone. And we found large gender differences in these cues to action variables. And that is quite interesting, that in a sample of 15,000 people, we found that men reported less family members with cancer history. And that is an interesting result. We looked it up in surveys from UK and the US, and we found that similar results are reported there as well. So either men do not know or they forget about the family history of cancer. Of course, and that is not surprisable, we found big differences in the use of the medical checkup. Every fourth man reported that he had never undergone such a general medical checkup. And we found large differences, like in the talk of Helen Farmer, we found how important the physician recommendation is and talking about. And 56% of our male participants said, oh, never a physician has recommended me to undergo a cancer screening examination. In Germany, the FOBT is often combined with a medical checkup. The fact that men compared to women, attend these checkups less often and less regularly may explain their lower use of FOBT. So perhaps in Germany, invitation letters might be an alternative. I would like to come very shortly to some important findings of our focus group studies, where we were looking for psychological barriers to cancer screening. And we found 3 main psychological barriers. One is a macho attitude towards the own body and health. A real man does not worry about his body or his health, and worrying about the body or the health is sissy stuff. That women do that, but a real man does not do that. Then we have the fear of the result of the examination, and especially the fear of the digital rectal examination. And that is very important, I think. In Germany, the prostate cancer examination, as it is part of the standard cancer screening examination, and the colorectal cancer screening examination are very highly correlated. We found in the survey of the 29,000 households a correlation of 0.7. So barriers to prostate cancer screening can become barriers to colorectal screening as well. And now I want to come more to psychological barriers in a closer sense. And we were interested in the role of social norms. We do have 2 kinds of social norms. What is approved or disapproved by significant others, for example, the wife, the partner, the family, the friends, the subjective norm. And what is done by other people of the reference group, the descriptive norm. How behave other men? So we used the extended theory of planned behavior of Eisen and Fishbein to explain cancer screening attendance in men. And we have the main issue of that theory is that it says the best predictor of behavior, not only health-related behavior, is the intention to undergo to a screening test in this case. And we have the attitude. Here are examples of the operationalizations. Oh, I always cannot spell this difficult word. How we assessed attitude. Then we have the subjective norm. The descriptive norm was assessed. What do you think? How many men in % of your age or of your friends go to cancer screening examinations regularly? And then we have the perceived behavioral control, or the self-efficacy. And we had several studies. We had this household survey, and then we had a cross-sectional study where we compared 2,500 men who differed in their past cancer screening behavior. And so we compared regular attenders, irregular attenders, and non-attenders. And we compared them in these psychological variables. And you see very clearly how sharply these 3 groups can be separated by psychological variables. The regular attendants have a more positive attitude toward cancer screening. They have a higher subjective norm. That means they think other important people expect them to go to the cancer screening examination. And what is very interesting, they have a higher descriptive norm. That means they think that 45% of other men go to cancer screening regularly, whereas the non-attenders think that only 28% go to cancer screening examination. And in the first step, we only entered social demographic variables. And you have an estimation for the importance of each variable block when you multiply this by 100, and then you have the % of variance which is explained in the attention. And so you see that socio-economic, social-demographic variables, including age, is very unimportant to predict intention to undergo cancer screening examination. But that the psychological variables are very important to predict this intention. And we have the subjective norm and the descriptive norm, which are also very important in explaining this intention. And there is an interaction between subjective and descriptive norm, I have figured it in this, illustrated this in this figure. When the subjective norm, what other important people expect me to do, is low, then I orient myself, or the men orient themselves, what the descriptive norm is. So if the subjective norm is low, and the descriptive norm is low as well, then the men are not motivated to undergo a cancer screening examination. But when the subjective norm is low, for example, because a man does not have a wife or a partner who makes pressure, then the descriptive norm makes the difference. Yeah? When the descriptive norm is high, the motivation is higher. So I come to the summary. You cannot easily change the male role. So this issue, we found it in all of our studies that the male role and the identification with the male role is a very important barrier to participation in cancer screening examinations. And the male role is constructed in everyday interactions daily. And I cannot come and make a campaign and say it is not unmanly to undergo a cancer screening examination. Men do not believe me, yeah? And I'm not the right person to tell them what is manly or not manly. So I cannot change the male role, but I can do something, and there are some implications of our research which are very easily implemented. So we have found that psychological variables, especially in German men, are more important predictors of men's cancer screening intentions and behavior compared to socio-demographic variables. This has also something to do that in Germany nearly all people are health insured, and so this kind of barrier cannot come into place. And what we found is that barriers to prostate cancer screening can become barriers to colorectal cancer screening as well. When a man goes to a medical checkup, then prostate cancer screening is conducted if he wants to do cancer screening, and then the FOBT is recommended. Yeah? So the barriers to prostate cancer screening can become barriers to colorectal cancer screening as well. So it is very important to disentangle these two kinds of cancer screening examinations. And what is very interesting, a very interesting study, result of our study is that descriptive norms play an important role in motivating or demotivating men to undergo cancer screening examinations, especially when subjective norms are low. And descriptive norms are often communicated in information given by media and campaigns. For example, in Germany, there are many campaigns which stress the fact that so few men undergo cancer screening. And in that case, you give a low descriptive norm. Yeah? And so it is quite the wrong way round. You should not, it is really important how you frame the message, and that is very easy to address this issue. The message should not be only every fifth man has undergone a cancer screening examination last year. That is a right figure, but it is the wrong descriptive norm what you give. But rather you should say, and that is right as well, 2/3 of men already had a cancer screening examination. What's about you? Thank you for your attention.